Hello, and welcome to Nomadic Diaries, the re-entry series. I'm Doreen Cumberford, the host.
And I'm Linda Mueller, the co-host.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Nomadic Diaries. This is the re-entry series for the month of November. I would like you to meet my co-host, Linda Mueller.
Hi, everyone.
And my name's Doreen Cumberford, the host of the show. Today, we are just going to talk about the outdoors and how to use inspiration. So what do we do on Sundays, Linda?
We're inspiring ourselves and others. That's what we're doing on Sundays.
Excellent. That's what we're doing on Sundays. We're hoping to inspire you. We're hoping to communicate across the idea that inspiration can be everywhere. You know, it's in everywhere we look, everything we hear, everything we see, if we spend enough time and attention. I would like to read you a little quote from John Muir before we start. He said, "Keep close to nature's heart and break clear away once in a while. Climb a mountain or spend a week in the woods. Wash your spirit clean."
Wow, that's pretty powerful. Simple yet powerful.
Yeah. Well, you know, when I came back from Saudi, I felt like I needed to wash it off of me. Have you ever had that sensation that you just you want a fresh start, but you're bringing all this home with us? Have you ever had that feeling?
I've had it sort of theoretically and physically, because when I lived in Abu Dhabi, it was similar. Like, even when we go to green spaces, they were so artificial feeling that it was hard to get that same feeling that I get here in Chicago, even just going over to Lincoln Park and walking along Lake Michigan, which looks like an ocean. So I think on different levels, I've had this, because I also think that there's times when, for example, we're repatriating and it's a heavy time, and then we get home, so to speak, to our passport country, and we feel that it's a chance to sort of refresh and revive ourselves from, to wash away the experiences of the past that were maybe heavy and to start anew.
Yes, I certainly felt that when I moved from the deserts of Saudi Arabia to the Pacific Northwest, where it was green and wet and rainy and sometimes miserable and cold, and I was extremely depressed. So I really wanted to do nothing but wash out the old systems of thinking and all of the patterns I had developed in Saudi Arabia, the approaches, the people, the community. I mean, that was home for 15 years, and I brought it back with me. And it was no longer home, but I needed to cleanse it in a way that felt inspiring and prepared me for the next. And so that's why we're talking about using the outdoors today as a place to perhaps help us reset our repatriation or reentry experiences.
And what I love about that is that the outdoors can just mean opening the door and stepping out and getting natural sunlight on your face in the morning. It does not have to be something fancy. And that's why I'm so excited to hear what you have to say today, because I think that keeping things simple is often the best way to go.
Yes, it is, because we do it more frequently and more regularly. And if it's natural, I mean, even if I just open the doors of my office, I have a greater connection to the outdoors. So I'm laughing because I was thinking both of us have lived in Japan. And I don't know if you did this, Linda, but one of the things I did in Japan was hunt for the greenery, hunt for the beauty. And often I couldn't find it because in our area, it was very built up. It was extremely city. There was 11,000 people lived in Yokohama at that time, and it was extremely city. But I could find it in the altars. I loved the little altars, and people would bring their ikebana and they put their flowers in their altars. And when I was hunting for beauty, nature, something, that's where I found it.
I was literally, as you started speaking, thinking the same exact thing, because I lived in Tokyo. I lived in Roppongi, like right in the thick of things. And when I was trying to envision where I would go when I wanted greenery, it was around the corner to the shrine. Or if we had more time, we could go to Meiji Shrine, which is a huge oasis in the middle of the city. And it'd be amazing because every once in a great while you would, as you walked through this forest, you would hear a car or a truck and think,
Yes.
oh, right, I'm still in the city, even though I'm in this forest. It was beautiful.
Yes, it was beautiful. We lived round the corner from Sankeian Gardens. And Sankeian Gardens are really very well revered in that part of the world in Japan. And what I remember was the first time we went, there was an enormous black butterfly. It must have been about 4 inches high. And it was just huge. And they were flying around. And my daughter was in a pushchair. She was only 2 years old. And I can remember those moments of nature in Japan that really kind of carried me through the hard parts of being away from home, not understanding a word, and being, thrown into this flat with hardly any furniture and not knowing if it was challenging, wasn't it?
I was just going to say, you're telling my story.
Exactly. Both of us have similar stories, but I think that these similar stories relate back to arriving home and landing well, because the benefits of using nature is, well, I have a list of them here. Some of the physical benefits that are actually documented and statistically recorded are things like if we spend time outside, we have improved sleep. We get more vitamin D. We can have an experience of having more energy. It strengthens our immune system, and it even has been proven to enhance our memory.
Amazing.
So these are all just physical things of carrying our body from one side of the world, perhaps to the other side of the world, or, for across many thousands of miles. It's important to center ourselves. And some of the other benefits that I discovered when I was looking into this was reduced stress. Now, I don't know about you, but did you find repatriation stressful, Linda?
I don't even know if stress depicts like what I was actually experiencing at times, but yes, it was stressful.
Occasionally.
Occasionally.
It goes up and down, doesn't it? It really goes up and down.
Definitely a roller coaster.
Reduce stress. It also helps with reducing depression and anxiety. And I think that when I arrived back in the Pacific Northwest, and I'd never lived there before. I'd lived in America, but not in the Pacific Northwest. I think that I kind of wrote my own prescription, because I was out there walking. We had a little dog, and I would walk those mountains. I would walk those forests, and there was not a tree in the whole of Saudi Arabia as big as some of those green trees, I think. And it was just healing. And I look back at my repatriation days extremely fondly, because I think that kind of nature was healing me at a subconscious level that I could never articulate or describe. And that's why I'm just such a fan for anyone who's in any kind of a life transition, is to get outside, right?
And one thing I wanted to add to that is that when we repatriate, we're pulled off of our normal schedule, right? I mean, anytime you go through a big transition, and one thing that's really nice about using the outdoors for inspiration is that it's something that you can do instead of other things that are maybe not quite as healthy. Instead of feeling stressed and grabbing a snack when you're not hungry, go for a walk. You never know who you might meet while you're out for the walk. You never know what clarity may pop into your head while you're out for the walk. Or listen, bring inspiration along with you. Listen to a book or listen to music, whatever it may be. I just think that there's something really solid about using the outdoors to inspire yourself on different levels during this period of time that is transitional.
Absolutely. And I think you're right about it. Its availability is one of the things. And it's available to almost all of us, no matter where we live. Mm-hmm. And I think the availability and the ease with which we can find nature, even if it's one little altar with some white flowers stuck in a vase. It was really some of the other now documented facts about spending time outside is it enhances healing, which I think speaks to what you were talking about it being, almost a subconscious thing. It's something we're not aware of. but it enhances healing, it enhances productivity, concentration, and attention, relating back to John Muir. It also enhances our physical well-being. I found when I was packaging myself up and moving myself to another place that I wanted to be very conscious of my well-being, because that is the invisible side of me that needs to come along, but sometimes doesn't get packed and unpacked. Sometimes we don't pack it up well before we leave, and we don't unpack it well at the next destination. So we're just here today to encourage you to maybe do better than at least I did. I really wish that I had done more of this. Some of the other benefits are increased community connection, reduced crime. Those are two of the social parts of being outside. And you notice, especially in the USA, well, all over the world now, runners, athletes, bikers. We don't do this alone.
Right. And there's even a lot of walking groups now.
Yes, yes.
So that's a way to create community.
Yeah, yeah. So just some real simple ways to connect with nature that you can do inside your house. So we've talked about the physical benefits and the mental benefits, and we talked about where you can go outside. But some of the inside things is we can grow houseplants. You can have a pet. You can practice mindfulness and go sit in a garden somewhere or in an atrium even, especially when it's cold outside in the winter. You can explore nature wherever you are. I want to just share a couple of resources. I don't know if you've heard of the Lion Tracker's Guide to Life by Boyd Varty, but he talks about growing up in South Africa on a game reserve where at one point the lions were eating the other smaller animals that they were trying to farm there. And then they flipped it to taking care of the lions instead of cows and cattle. And they made it a lion preserve. And I thought, that's exactly what we need to do when we come back from repatriation. We need to flip our thinking about stuff. And it's a wonderful book. I'd also recommend Tim Ferriss. He interviews Boyd, and he has some great stories. He's a wonderful storyteller, but he also shares stories about being a tracker and tracking wild animals. And some of these trackers will go out for days. And I'm aware of a similar experience in Saudi Arabia. Before they started to drill for oil, they would find some old desert Bedouin wandering around in the middle of the desert, miles from anywhere. And they became trackers. And the people who came from the West watched them, and they seemed like they could smell the oil. They could look at a sand dune and they could say, it's here, but not there. And they could watch the pattern of the sand dunes being whipped up by the wind and moved. And that was a clue. And I think that our repatriation journeys are something like that. It's kind of like, I'm smelling the wind. Which way should I go now? It's a very intuitive process. And it's different for each of us.
That makes sense, though, in terms of just being very in tune with your surroundings and then trusting your intuition as you're reading what's going on around you. I think that's actually quite inspiring.
And Simon Sinek says he interviewed a fellow called Ron Finley, and this is a really good one to listen to. And Ron Finley, he got a ticket because he decided he wanted to plant a garden, but he started off on public property, like in some major thoroughfare in LA. And he went outside and he started planting. And first of all, he got a ticket. And then he got a warrant for an arrest. And this happened not once, but several times, I believe. And he eventually he went to jail, but he became really famous as someone who takes public spaces or swimming pools or any old patch of land and simply transform it into a garden that will feed people. And
That's
find
amazing.
a great metaphor for young people so that we can understand where our food comes from. And so Simon Sinek says, yeah, this is like going to new places and creating new spaces. And who amongst us doesn't do that when we're repatriating?
Mm.
There was also another quote that I heard. It said, I can go somewhere new, or I can grow something new around me. And I think that frequently that's what we're doing with our lives when we move back. We're growing a new life. And if we use nature as a different kind of soil, I think we can replant and re-enter with greater ease and grace. I hope that this has been useful for someone. Thoughts or questions, Linda?
Well, I like that you are providing some resources for our listeners. And I'd also like to throw out a couple things that I've come across myself.
Good.
And one is a Japanese practice, forest bathing, which
Yes.
I did not know about when I lived in Japan, but it's something that's become quite popular. And it's and so I'll put a link to a book that I found quite interesting in the show notes, but it's basically when you go out and you're very intentionally looking at the plants around you, touching the leaves, not to pull them off or rip them, but maybe just to release a scent in them. And there's been studies done that show a lot of the things that you talked about, like the healing powers, the mental benefits of actually almost becoming one with the nature around you. So I'll put a book in the show notes. And then the other one is grounding, which has become quite popular in the last few years. And there's ways to do grounding as simple as, if you have a garden, going out into your backyard and placing your bare feet on the earth. And there's a little more to it, but it's really basically that simple. But there's also other, which seems a little counterintuitive, but there's some tools that you can bring into your house to allow you to ground inside. And I've done it myself, and I've found it very relaxing, which is something that I think, as we talked about earlier, we all could use during this transitional phase and relaunch phase of our life as we're repatriating. So I'd love to share those resources with the listeners as well.
So we'll put these in the show notes for the specific recording. Thank you so much, listeners, for being here. We hope that if you are in the midst of your re-entry journey or your repatriation journey, that you will consider taking the time, the space, the energy, and paying attention to nature in order that you can use it as a booster or a thruster to make yourself and your re-entry maybe more harmonious, maybe faster, maybe healthier. But we wish you the best of success. Linda?
Thanks for being here, everyone. And please reach out if you have any questions. We'd love to hear from you.
Sayonara, masalama, hasta luego.
Bye-bye.